Welcome everyone to the VLOGAN, a vlog for individuals with special needs and those who love them. Logan here. Thank you for tuning in to the VLOGAN vlog for individuals with special needs and people who love them. Today, I think that we've gone as far up the leadership chain in Ohio as we possibly can. I'm interviewing Director Wente. She is the director of the Department of Children and Youth, and she's going to tell us all about the great things that they are doing. Welcome, Director Wente.
Thank you, Logan. I'm excited to be here.
It was just a couple weeks ago that I met with one of your employees and learned about your new department, the Department of Children and Youth. And as you know, I work with many people in the disability community. And so I'm interested in the Department of Children and Youth and how it fits in with the disability community.
Absolutely. So in the last biennial budget, Governor DeWine proposed in his executive budget to create the new Department of Children and Youth solely focused on kids. He wanted someone to wake up every day and think about kids and how we could do better for them. His goal always, if you've heard from the governor, you've heard him say, we want all kids to reach their full potential and live their version of the American dream. Not yours, not mine, but their version of the American dream. He stresses that as well, and really meet them where they are. In the last budget, we were very fortunate to get approved by the House and the Senate. So we officially became a department on July 4th with the signing of the budget. And to say the last few months have been a whirlwind is an understatement, but we fortunately have been able to bring together team members from 5 legacy organizations. So we have team members from education, the Department of Developmental Disabilities, the Department of Health, the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and Job and Family Services that all came under one roof. So we can be solely accountable to better serving our kids. When you look at the disability lens, that really ranges for us. So one, our mission is to reach families when they have a question or a concern, not a crisis. So early identification, better supports and resources. But when you look at the programs that have come over, the ones I would quickly call out are certainly early intervention is now here at DCY. But we've also done a lot of work in the childcare space. So one of the pieces and parts that we know a lot of families with children with disabilities have struggled with is when they're trying to go to work, finding a safe place for their kids to go and feel comfortable that they're going to get the care that they need. So we've done a lot around this, the space of really enhancing training and access to services. So that's kind of been a quick focus in the last few months. But a lot of our work really is just looking at the system from that child's perspective, really trying to determine what we can do better to meet their needs rather than having them try to figure out where to go when they're already in a time of maybe instability or concern or question. Because I didn't mention it, but we also have all of the children's services programs here as well.
Okay. Oh, wow. So that's a lot to digest. And so if it's okay, I'd like to kind of dive into some of the common programs that the folks that I work with on a daily basis access. Is Help Me Grow part of the Department of Children and Youth?
It absolutely is, yes.
Could you describe a little bit about Help Me Grow and how it may have changed since it's come under your umbrella?
So far, we really haven't changed Help Me Grow. Help Me Grow in early intervention, families become eligible through going through central intake. If you're familiar with Bright Beginnings, they're a vendor that we utilize. Families can still access services for that voluntary Help Me Grow program to help that mom and baby or that family and baby in that first year of life. And then obviously once they get enrolled, we have expanded eligibility depending on the model to either age 3 or age 5. We did expand that through the last budget. And what we're really looking at from the Help Me Grow and early intervention standpoint is they are great programs that Help Me Grow is pretty well known. And of course, we want to continue to expand it. The governor came into office wanting to triple the number of kids being served at home visiting. So we continue to look at how do we expand services, but they don't access it differently. The major change that I would love to just give a quick update on was in the last budget, we got a new investment to expand and actually create a pilot program called Family Connects. Family Connects, the reason it's so different than the models we currently have in home visiting is because it's universal. So you may remember the old Welcome Home model where every mom got a visit from a
Yes.
Help Me Grow individual. And the Family Connects model is very similar, except they get a visit from a nurse. So they get a visit from a registered nurse. They could get one visit, they could get 3 visits. They could then get referred to an additional home visiting program or early intervention or both if that's appropriate. But it doesn't matter their income. So we have 11 communities that we actually just this past Monday got approval to move the agreements forward and start that pilot program. If you had the opportunity to watch the governor in the state of the state, he is committed to moving this program towards statewide capacity in the next budget.
Wow, awesome. And that's different than home visiting?
The current home visiting model had models like Nurse Family Partnership, Healthy Families America, Moms and Babies First. This adds a new model, but it's a little different than the other models because it caps generally at 3 visits. But it's really, they're going to schedule that visit. They're going to get to know that mom oftentimes before they leave the hospital and have that first visit in that first week, often of going home with a nurse and really be able to ask questions, talk about sleep, talk about breastfeeding, and it doesn't matter their income, unlike our other programs. So it is all a part of home visiting, but it is a new model that really focuses on how do we engage earlier and answer those questions to get them set on the right path. And then if they need a referral, how do we make that happen?
Awesome. Thank you for that information. You mentioned accessing services, and I think that the most well-known place to access services is the County Board of Developmental Disabilities. You mentioned help me grow through something else. Can you clarify that for me?
We use a vendor called Bright Beginnings. They run our central intake process. So that vendor is going to look at the family, where they're at, what models are available. They'll make referrals.
And
Often,
that's the intake at Department of Children and Youth.
correct. So we contract with them, and then they'll work with the county board to make sure that you get into the appropriate model. They'll look at the local providers for home visiting. They're going to connect you directly with those local providers in that community to facilitate that eligibility process.
So this is a different door to go into for services with the hope that the services are more tailored directly to what that family needs.
That's correct. So what we're actually doing with central intake right now is they focus on birth to 3 because their only referral process is home visiting and early intervention. I shouldn't say their only process. They do a great job of really connecting families with other community resources as well. One of the first actions we took as a new department was to look at how we could expand that central intake process, because we want to be able to provide families a warm handoff to whatever service is appropriate for them. So central intake was a birth to 3 focus starting in July. We've updated that contract. We actually had to go back out for procurement, and it will look at birth to 5 with the goal that until a child reaches school age, there's one place for us to refer, and then that family to get connected to those local providers for home visiting, their DD board for early intervention, preschool special education, and navigating the district. We didn't want to have to route them directly to a variety of sources. We want a central process so that they have one person they can talk to. And then we can start to look at how does that family really navigate the system. What we often heard, one of the examples that you probably are familiar with, is when families age out of early intervention, there's a transition process, and that age cutoff is 3. No matter where they're at kind of in their cycle, 3 is the cutoff. And what we also realized over this last year is that about 1,500 kids every year age out of early intervention and don't qualify for preschool special education. Doesn't mean they don't need more supports and services, and we certainly don't want them to lose the ground that they've covered through early intervention. So what we've been looking at through this process is how can we fill that stopgap if they don't qualify. So our goal in
Amazing.
all of
That's amazing.
all of this is to try to streamline.
Great. So if I were to have a client who, or a person who calls me and says, "Hey, we have a 2-year-old. We're not sure that she is developing in the way that that we think that we should when we go online and we Google all these benchmarks. She's not making eye contact with us. There's no babble." I could tell them, "Hey, there's Department of Children and Youth. That's where you need to call to get in and talk with them and find out exactly what services are available and where to go."
That's right. And then we'll navigate that next step. So one of the other pieces that we had the great fortune as a new agency to go out and really meet with families that had lived experience. So whether they had involvement in early intervention or home visiting or childcare or children's services as a kinship, a foster parent, adoptive parent, a biological parent, we've done 10 sessions in 5 different areas of the state. So we've met with over 200 families and asked them, what would have made your experience with our system better? How would it have been better? And oftentimes they said it would have been better if there was just someone I could have called. I could have asked a question, it would have been judge-free. And so we are currently in the process of hiring what we're calling parent and youth ambassadors through our child care resource referral agencies. So you could certainly have them call the department, and who's going to answer the phone is going to be those parent and youth ambassadors. We're working to stand that up over the summer. We do have the call line up. It's not fully functional yet, so we'll do a big campaign when it is, but the goal being that we're going to get these parent and youth ambassadors from the local communities, housed in the local communities, getting to know these families. They can route to our department, answer questions, and then they'll get them to that next warm handoff for service, often being central intake.
Oh, that's amazing. And you say, is that up and running now, or that's something that's coming?
It's coming. So we are in the process of hiring the parent and youth ambassadors. So hopefully by the end of June, we will have 11 of them onboarded with the goal to have, our goal is to have 24 over the next year. So once we know we have the capacity to really take on those calls, hopefully this fall, we'll be rolling out that line. We do have a phone number now. It's just not fully up and running yet.
Many of my clients, they come in early and they talk about BCMH. And I know that's in the Department of Health, but is that moving over with you all too? Can you, and just so everyone knows, BCMH stands for the Bureau for Children with Medical Handicaps. So if you could, can you talk a little bit about that if you're able to, and is that falling under your umbrella of children and youth?
So no, BCMH is staying at the Department of Health. We are continuing to look at, did we get it right? So when we went through the last budget process, we're trying to evaluate the programs that we thought we needed, and then what do we need, if anything, next, or what's the cleanup going to look like? Right now, BCMH is slated to stay at the Department of Health, but we continue to work really closely with them. So we still have the Office of Children's Initiatives at the Department of Children and Youth, which is really responsible for making sure that coordination for programs outside of our agency happens. So we're working to try to streamline those processes as well, whether it's WIC, BCMH, multi-system youth. We're working with our great partners at ODH and ODM, the Department of Medicaid, to make sure that we can try to streamline those services as well.
So through central intake, a person could be referred to the Department of Health for BCMH.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. And the goal of central intake, actually, so they already have a county by county list of community resources, not just state government, but housing, food pantries, childcare programs, and they update that quarterly. And we're really trying to make sure that they have referral options for as many questions as we can. And then our goal over the next year is to also use those resources and supports to also share that information with, like, for a good example, our childcare programs. Sometimes our licensed childcare programs are the only individuals that see the adult outside of their work. So they see them when they've had a flat tire or a broken windshield and they need a resource or a support. So we're trying to make sure that they also have that information to make those referrals when necessary as well.
Where's the best place for people to go to get information about the Department of Children and Youth?
Our website is up and running. It is the Department of Children and Youth.ohio.gov. So it's long, but there is an email address there. There is a phone number that's the start of our phone line. So they can certainly go to that website. They can email, they can chat, they can get connected with us pretty quickly. And we try to make sure that our families and our children are obviously our number one priority. And we have, I think, one of the best customer service desks, of course, to try to answer those questions. And I'll just say our phone number actually just launched last week. So it is 1-844-234-KIDS.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And
that makes it nice.
Yeah, so I can send it over to you as well.
That would be great. Yeah. So it's not at the bottom of the website yet.
No, we are soft launching it, which is why I didn't add it to the actual response. But for you to know, it's going to be coming up very soon. But I figure under promise and over deliver would be better.
That's perfect.
Are you familiar with Ohio Promise?
I am not.
So Ohio Promise, we launched last fall. It was coordinated through the Office of Children's Initiatives, but it really is focused on inclusion, and it is looking at how we can better train our early childhood professionals to support families with children with special needs. I don't know if more so than anything, I just wanted to make sure if you're dealing with families that are still struggling to find care when they're going to work or to get a break or to have a minute of respite, we have rolled out a new training credential. More than 3,000 of our early childhood professionals have now earned it, which is really focused on how do you serve children with disabilities or special needs. And then how do we better support those programs? So we have a center of excellence that actually allows them, the provider, to get equipment so the parent doesn't have to bring it back and forth. It actually has a scholarship program. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew about that, just in case you have families that you can refer. We've seen about a 20% increase in kids presenting with special needs in our licensed childcare facilities, which is great, because what I feel like is we haven't created the right access yet. So that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that families have parental choice and that they can choose a provider and they're not just stuck going wherever they can find, or worse, not having an option at all. Yeah. So I wanted to bring that up in case.
Thank you. And Ohio Promise is under the Department of Children and Youth?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
So let me make sure that I understand this. So since July, when you launched, you've got Ohio Promise, right? And then these other initiatives that we've just talked about. So, I mean, the last year has just been like a treadmill going real fast.
That is exactly right. It's been very rewarding. And the piece that I didn't mention on the early intervention side is we've launched a pilot in 4 counties in Northeast Ohio that would actually prioritize kids that age out of early intervention and don't qualify for preschool special education. We prioritize them for an early childhood education slot, which means they get public preschool for free for 2.5 hours a day. So it's not in their home anymore, but it starts to acclimate them to a classroom.
Yeah.
And that way, when we prioritize them because they're in the early intervention pilot, we don't have to follow the same income guidelines. So since January, if kids have aged out of early intervention and weren't qualified in these 4 communities for preschool special education, we had the opportunity to give them an early childhood education slot to get them public preschool for 2.5 hours a day. So it's a small pilot because it had to be after January, you aged out, you were in one of the 4 counties, and you didn't qualify for preschool special education, but 10 children have benefited from it already. So it may seem small to everyone else, but I'm like, those are 10 kids that got a service that they didn't have before.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And we're looking at how we can better align that and obviously scale eventually, but we have to learn from how do we make those transitions smooth, who has the ability to share the data once they age out of early intervention and go into preschool and don't qualify for preschool special education, who can reach out. So as you can appreciate, we're navigating some of the confidentiality laws, but so far we've been successful in 10 cases. So I feel like
what's the name of that pilot program?
It's the Early Intervention Exeter. We didn't come up with a creative name.
Yeah, I like it. And then, so let's talk about the alternative. So this is a child who aged out of early intervention, has some special needs, but doesn't qualify for special needs preschool. So what would be the alternative if this wasn't there? What would have occurred for these 10 children?
The parents would have had to determine if they could find a resource that they could support. There wouldn't have been another state provided program.
Got it.
So our concern is always, early intervention is such a great program. Kids see so much growth. The last thing we want to do is see them not have a place when they turn 3 until they go to kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the way the eligibility is determined.
Yeah, right. Amazing. Amazing. I mean, you guys have just done so much. I know that you've been out everywhere, but boy, we need a campaign to talk about your department. And I hope that I'm just a small part of that.
You can be a big part of that. We just started to go down our campaign process. So we have enlisted a vendor. We're doing a baseline survey. What do parents know today? What do we need them to know? It goes from everything from how do they navigate our system and programs, but also to all parents, what do we want them to know about their kids? Part of what we asked in our parent sessions was your 200 parents that have children that have been in the system, what do you want to tell someone else? And what they always said is tell them to be intentional, be present, put your phone down. And I think the best one we heard was, we always say it takes a village, find your village. This isn't something you can do on your own. And so now we're taking those messages and trying to figure out how can we do a statewide campaign? How can we push this on social media to get families to connect with what does DCY do? And then when do I call them? Well, you don't have to have a crisis to call us. Actually, call us before that.
Yes.
And that's the goal of the parent ambassador line. One of the moms said, I didn't know how to weigh my baby. I'm like, well, then we should be able to answer that question for
That's
you.
awesome.
So
awesome.
I really appreciate you making time for us today.
Oh, no, thank you. I'm going to tell you that you mentioned those 10 kids. I was reminded of, that expression, save one child, save the world. I mean, you just did 10, it's just amazing.
So the starfish story, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Sure. Yeah.
I have shared it with the team. I bought them cards. I bought them little silver starfish. I'm like, guys, this isn't going to be, if it was easy, it would have been done. Like, it's going to be one kid at a time sometimes.
That's amazing. Kara, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Logan. Please like, share, and subscribe so you can stay up to date with some of the latest news in the disability community.